Hi, everyone. A very good day to you. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking out a little bit of your time today to join us for this community webinar. We're going to be talking about digital well-being, online safety for parents and caregivers at your district. If you are the parent of an elementary school child, you're definitely in the right place. This is the second out of a series of 3 introductory webinars that we're offering to the families at your district. We covered the middle schoolers yesterday. Today, we're speaking to our elementary school parents and caregivers, and then tomorrow, we're going to have a session for high schoolers as well. For those of you who are watching a recording of this webinar, we did offer all of these webinars live, and so we do want to give our attendees just a couple of more minutes to join us. And before I go into introductions, I'm just going to have a look at our list of attendees. I can see Rachel is there. So Rachel, I'm just going to invite you to unmute yourself and give us a few words of welcome as people continue to join.
Excellent. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Hi, Rachel.
Okay, very good, very good. I always like to check. Well,
Yeah.
I'm super excited to join you. A guest night was fabulous and such great information. I think about a year's worth of different topics that we have in store for our community and just the outreach that I know you will offer for everyone. And I'm excited for what it has brought for interest from the community, but also just about things that we need to be talking more about and opening that line of communication. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise. And I just know this is going to be a great start to the school year when we start talking about things like digital well-being and online safety, and that partnership is essential. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And on behalf of the district, I know your time is so important in the evenings with your children, and we just appreciate that partnership.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel. And yeah, as I've mentioned, as Rachel alluded to right now as well, we do have a year's worth of programming prepared for you. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this program in just a couple of seconds, but we're covering sort of the really the basics with these first 3 introductory webinars, especially if this is really your first time sort of consuming content of this kind around this topic of children's online behavior, the risks and benefits of the virtual spaces where they spend so much of their time. This is really going to be that nice kind of online safety and digital well-being 101 type of course where you are going to get some insights, a lot of practical sort of tips and pieces of advice from me as well, things that you can really start thinking about immediately, things that you can start implementing immediately as well, and some topics that you can start talking with your children about really straight away after watching this webinar. And then for the rest of the year, we do have plans to dive a little bit deeper into some of the key topics that we frequently hear our partner districts talking to us about, parents and caregivers talking about. So we'll be covering everything from some of the sort of heavier, more complex topics like sexting, teenagers using artificial intelligence, all the way across to gaming, to cyberbullying, to screen time, and a lot of other topics. And we are going to touch upon all of these today. So thank you once again for all of you who are joining us live. I can see that we still have a few people trickling in. I'm going to go into introductions now and just tell you a little bit about myself and about LineWise as well. So my name is Teodora Pavkovic. I'm the Director of Wellbeing at LineWise. We're a global organization that's focused on children's online safety and digital well-being. I'm sure that all of you, if not most of you, are familiar with the fact that school districts in the United States do need to have internet filters implemented. This needs to be present at schools and at libraries as well, because of course we want to make sure that as much as we're able to, we keep children away from some of those really problematic and even dangerous types of content, pornography being one of the main ones that's of concern when we talk about filtering the internet in that sort of educational setting. But there's so many other ways in which we can not only keep children safe but really make sure that we are aware of some of the issues that they're running into as they're interacting with their devices, as they're spending a lot of time in gaming environments, on social media. And then, of course, there's a big difference in sort of how we conceptualize all of these issues when our child is, say, 3, 4, or 5 years old, as compared to when they're 12, as compared to when they're 18 and 19 and 20, and once they've left home. And so my background is in psychology. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology. I've worked a lot with parents, with families, facilitating workshops, facilitating coaching sessions, also consulting with different brands and organizations around the world, really focusing on our emotional well-being, and then really in the context of technology, how can we really protect and preserve our well-being while interacting with some of these incredibly powerful and sometimes even overwhelming types of technology that we're all exposed to right now, especially our children. And so what you can expect over the next sort of 25 or 30 minutes that we're going to be together during this presentation are a couple of different areas that I would like to cover with you. So the first thing I want to go into is your district's digital wellness community program. I want to talk to you about the key pillars and the key resources that your district, through their partnership with us, is providing to you. One of those key pillars is the online safety hub. And so I'm going to jump into your district's hub, do a little bit of a demo, make sure that you understand what that resource looks like, what are the different types of content that you can find in there, and really where you can get some of your sort of key, most pressing questions answered in there, and some of the ways in which you can reach out to us in case you need any additional help around any of the questions you might have. I'm then going to go into the key online safety risks and just sort of give you a very high level view of what those risks are, the risks that we see children, not just in the United States, but really all around the world, run into as they start to use the internet and as they start using digital devices a little bit more frequently as they get older. And then the third and final part is that most sort of proactive part, if you will, of this webinar. I want to share with you some actionable steps around online safety management. And as I mentioned earlier, you can think of this session as a kind of introductory session to this topic. So we refer to this online safety management approach as the ABCs of keeping children safe online for families. And when we're talking about the ABCs, what we're really talking about is the access to technology, talking about kind of creating and setting up those healthy boundaries, and then also talking about communication, which is probably one of the most important pieces. And if you have an elementary school child, even if you have a kindergartner, it's really never too early to start talking about these topics. And I've spoken to lots of parents who've started talking about topics like, for example, commercialization and the number and the amount and the frequency of ads that we see on platforms like Facebook, all the way across to YouTube and gaming platforms. And they'll start talking to their children about this from a very, very early age, and they'll point out different, commercials in different platforms. And you'll find that by the time these kids are sort of older elementary schoolers, they're already very much in tune to the fact that this is really the kind of the business model for most of the platforms that we frequent. So in other words, bottom line, it's really never too early to start talking to your kids about many of the topics that I'll be reaching with you today. So a little bit of information around the community wellness program. As I mentioned, we have partnered with your district to bring you all this really fantastic information. I mentioned, school-based internet filters. We think of these as the very sort of basic minimum of how we want to go about protecting children. And then we really want to layer other approaches and other strategies on top of that filter, which protects those school issue devices. And the Community Digital Wellness Program, parental engagement, education is one of those, in my opinion, perhaps the most important layer. So the three key pillars of the program, for one, is the online safety hub that I'm going to be demoing for you in just a little bit. The hub is essentially a website where you're going to be able to find a lot of really fantastic educational material and tips on things like how to set up parental controls, activate privacy settings, is TikTok safe for your child, depending on their age, and lots of different things. I'll be showing you those details in just a second. The second pillar there, we won't be going into that during this particular webinar, but it's something called the Custodio Parent app. It's a parental control tool that enables you to have some insight into your child's activity online on their device, and then to also really apply those ABCs of online safety management while using the app, just to make sure that your child is having a sort of a safe and healthy experience online. And then third and final is what we're engaging in right now, these live parent webinars. We do always deliver these live, and then we'll send through a recording to your school district, and Rachel will be sharing the recording of this webinar and all of the ones that will be coming up throughout the academic year with you, so that you really always have that as a resource that you can really easily just refer to anytime you have a question around some of these topics. And then the one final thing I want to say, even though I personally am based in the US, LineWise is a global organization. I am the lead online safety and digital well-being expert for our region here, but I have counterparts in lots of different places around the globe, places like the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand as well. And so all of the material that I present during these webinars, the material that you're going to see inside your online safety hub. There's a team, a global team of global experts with really different and diverse backgrounds, all coming together to sort of pool all of the knowledge and experiences that we have based on our different backgrounds and based on the different parts of the world in which we live, to bring you all of these really great and really useful and very timely resources. That's really the most important thing for us. Technology changes very, very quickly. There are constantly new updates happening. And so we need to make sure that we're constantly updating the information that we share with you. And we do this on a regular basis with our webinars, with all the content that you'll see inside the Online Safety Hub as well. So you'll hear me say those three words a lot, Online Safety Hub. It is one of our most exciting resources. This is the QR code that you can use in order to head over to your district's Online Safety Hub now, if you like. The hub is also going to be linked up on your district's website very shortly. The website is currently going through a little bit of a revamp and an update, but very soon you are going to be able to access your hub through your district's website as well. So it'll be really easy for you to find it there. So if you just bear with me for a second, I'm going to stop sharing my slides with you so that I can pop on over into the hub. All right. And hopefully you can see my screen again. You can see your district's little logo there, and know that you're in the right place. So I'm just going to point out a few sort of different parts of the hub and a few different features of the hub as well. There's really a lot there to go through. You can see here as I'm scrolling down that landing page, we have a lot of different sort of areas and the ways in which we have kind of categorized our content, really all with the purpose to make it easy for you to find the information that you need. So I would definitely encourage you to head over to the hub when you have a few minutes, have sort of a poke around, just become a little bit more familiar with this resource, and hopefully it will help just to have me point out sort of a couple of different features of this platform. So you'll see for one that one sort of easy way to navigate this website is through these little tabs, these little categories that we have here up on top. If you land here for the very first time and you know that questions around screen time are something that's kind of a big deal for you, something you've been thinking about a lot. If you do have a kindergartner or an elementary school child in particular, this might be one of sort of the hottest topics that you're hearing about and that you're thinking about, then you can click on that tab and that will show you sort of the top articles that we've written and the top resources we've created within that particular sort of realm of online safety issues. Along the left-hand side, you'll see that we have a couple of different filters there that you can use as well to make sure that the content that you're looking at is really most relevant for you. And then if you click on more down here, you will see this little drop down with a few different topics there as well. So if we go back to the landing page, again, if you kind of scroll down the landing page, you'll see we have our most recent articles published here. You'll see that we have our reviews as well. And I'll click on these ones too, just to give you a sense of what this section looks like. So at this point, we have reviewed somewhere over 300 different gaming, social media, and other types of apps and platforms. I think it's something like 312 at this point. And I'm sure you'll recognize many of these little logos. If you do have an elementary school child, it's quite likely that they're into things like YouTube, It is actually the #1 most used social media platform by kids of all ages in the US. Things like Roblox and Minecraft are probably sort of a common occurrence in your home as well. But again, you can use some of these filters around here along the left-hand side, and just scroll through here to find the particular app or platform that you're looking for. We have a little search bar here as well that you can also use to make sure that you find the specific content that you're looking for. And then I'll click on the TikTok one just to give you a sense of the types of information that we find to be really important that we want to share with you as you're thinking about the different platforms that your children are using. One of the really important things is an age recommendation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about setting up those boundaries, but you'll see that pop up here up on top first. We do have a little share button, so in case you would like to share this piece with a friend of yours, perhaps with a spouse that you're co-parenting with, grandparents, aunts, uncles, babysitters, really anybody who you would like to have this information. Then we give a little bit of a descriptor of that app or platform, the key features there, what some of the key known risks are, and then we delve into the topics that you need to know about as a parent, some of the recommendations around responsible use, and then some of the how-tos as well. So it's really important that we don't just sort of present you with the issue or the problem, but we also give you the solution and we give you the actionable steps that you can take. And that's where you're going to find those for each one of these platforms here. If by any chance you find that you've read an article, you would like a little bit more information about that particular topic, or perhaps you've gone into the hub and you haven't found the kind of article, the kind of resource that would really be helpful to you, then I really encourage you and invite you to use this request a new article or app review button. We have covered a lot of ground inside the Online Safety Hub, but there's so many more topics that are really, really important to parents that they want to know about. So if you do find that we don't have a resource there that you're really needing, please don't hesitate to use this button, give us a little bit of information about the kind of content that you're looking for. That then goes through to myself and our content creation team, and then we start working on that resource. And as I mentioned earlier, we're constantly reviewing the content inside the hub. We're constantly adding to it, and we're constantly going back and updating the existing content there that we have as well. This Explore section also makes it easy for you to orient yourself inside the hub. If you're not totally sure what kind of information you're looking for, perhaps you're just starting out, then this is a good section to be in, to click on that link, and then that will take you to some of those sort of introductory articles that you can read through. We have a little bit of information here about the Custodio app, and then because we wanted to mix it up a little bit in terms of the format of the resources that we offer, we do have some video-based content here as well. And you will see a familiar face pop up there. So you'll see that I've created a few of those videos for you there. So I'm going to leave it that when it comes to the hub. As I mentioned, we could spend a lot of time talking about the various different sections here. I do encourage you to head on over there after this webinar and just have a look around, just sort of familiarize yourself a little bit more with that content. And as I mentioned, if you do find that we haven't covered a particular topic that you're really interested in, then please feel free to use that button and to let us know that you'd like to request a new piece for the hub. All right, so what are some of the key risks that we're sort of having to deal with? A lot of the content in the hub is really centered around these key risks. There are 8 that we have identified to be relevant in this moment in time. This is also a list that we go into every sort of 6 to 12 months, and we review it and we update it as necessary. And you can see that one of the newest additions there is generative AI. We weren't really talking about that as a major risk, say, about 12 months ago. And if you do have an elementary school child, you might be thinking, well, I'm not sure if this is really a risk that I need to be worrying about right now. It's really important that we have a sense of sort of what is the general landscape of the digital world. What are some of the potential sort of obstacles or risks that our children might be running into, even if they are not relevant just right now at this moment. For example, for those of you who do have things like smart speakers inside your home, a lot of those by now are using generative AI. And so even in moments when you're not quite aware of it, perhaps your younger children are still interacting with different forms of AI powered technologies, right? Sometimes we're not even aware of the sort of the full extent of the types of technologies that they're coming into contact with. So things like misinformation as well, things like pornography and sexting. It's good to keep these in mind and just to be aware of them as topics that might start coming up as our children get a little bit older. I also mentioned earlier that that C in the ABC approach is all about communication. It's all about having conversations with children about these various online safety risks. And so for us as their parents, their caregivers, the adults, the really key trusted adults in their lives, it's really important that we have this sort of insight into some of the potential issues they might be running into a couple of years down the line. Keep that in mind, and then really gently and slowly and preemptively start having some of those conversations and make sure that our children as well are aware of the fact that these are some of the problems that they might be running into down the line. When it comes to some of those more serious topics like say grooming or things like sexting, obviously it's a lot, well, it's relatively easier to talk about these with our high school children as compared to say our elementary schoolers, definitely when it comes to our kindergartners. But I would argue that each one of these topics has a sort of version that you can talk about in an appropriate way, even with a very, very young child. So when it comes to topics like, for example, grooming and sexting, a lot of that really focuses on the types and amount of personal information that children end up sharing with other people. When it comes to sexting, it might just be a peer. Of course, when it comes to grooming, oftentimes children might assume that it is a peer. Sometimes they're fully aware that they're actually interacting with an adult, and they like the fact that they are, and that's why they continue to engage in those interactions. But when it comes to both sexting and grooming, they can really become problematic when children end up oversharing, right? They end up sharing way too much information about themselves or about their families, and that's definitely a topic that we can breach with our kids when they're very, very young. Even if they're just starting out school, we can start having those conversations about what is privacy and what is personal. What does that mean in today's world? And how much information do we share with other people? How much do we want to just keep for ourselves? How much do we share with our family versus with people who are outside of our family? So all of that is to say that even some of those scarier topics, we can really start laying the groundwork for addressing them with our kids later, even when they're very, very young as kindergarten. So I've already said a little bit about the ABC approach of online safety management. Of course, the basic structure of this approach is, first of all, addressing the access to whatever technology is in our child's environment. We're then talking about the boundaries around that technology that they have access to. And then that third and final and perhaps most important piece is really how we communicate about that technology with them, about whatever is going online, and really how we do that on a daily basis. There are a few different trends that I like to share with families, and I share different ones sort of depending on the age of the children that we're talking about. I wanted to share this one around not just screen time, but really the sort of the quality of the screen time and really the sort of location of where all of that time is being spent when it comes to younger children. And this is a piece of research that came out just last year. It was recently updated as well, that was looking at that age 2 to 12 age range and really looking at where kids this age are spending most of their time. I mentioned earlier that YouTube is the #1 platform for kids and teens in the US. That has been the case for many, many years. So that's not quite a surprise. The surprise for me and the slight sort of alarm came from looking at those younger sort of age groups, looking at where they're spending their time and looking at the percentages of, for example, the 2 to 5 year olds who have watched and consumed TikTok. And we're talking about almost 40% of kids having done that. Even when we go up into some of the older ages, so we're now looking at sort of 10 to 12, we're talking about over half of the children in the families that were polled for this report who have been consuming TikTok in one form or another on whatever device that happens to be. In some cases, this would have been sort of co-consumed with the adult in the home, but sometimes they would have watched this content by themselves. This is one example where being really aware of age recommendations and restrictions, where that becomes incredibly important, because TikTok is typically not recommended to children younger than about the age of 15. In fact, it sort of moves between 14 to 16. Illegally, some of you might know this, most social media platforms, a lot of gaming platforms as well, are not really meant to be used by children younger than 13. And so this is one of the sort of the recent trends that we've been seeing, and the percentages unfortunately are going up. So the most recent report that this digital marketing agency released actually showed that about 44% of 2 to 12-year-olds have consumed TikTok over the past sort of 6 months. So they were just looking at half of 2024. And they actually found that almost 30% had consumed content on Instagram as well. So if you are the parent of a younger child, sort of that 12 and below age, especially the kids who are between kind of the 6 to 9 and the little ones who are between 2 to 5, this is one thing that I would encourage you to keep in mind, to think about the quality of the content that they're consuming and really the appropriateness of that content based on their age. So let's look at some of the practical recommendations around this approach, and let's look at access first. So what are we talking about when we're talking about access? We're definitely trying to answer the what question, but we're also answering the when question as well. So what is the child actually accessing? For example, is it YouTube? Is it TikTok? Is it just a game? Is it an ebook, right? It can be a lot of different things. And these are all sort of different in terms of their quality and appropriateness. But then we're also asking the question of when do kids have access to this? And we're going to be talking about sort of screen time management with that step number 2, with creating boundaries. So some of the practical things that we recommend, for one, is definitely to use parental control tools. Whether they're free or paid, it really doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you, whatever your own preference is, whatever platform or app you prefer, to block and manage that access to platforms, and to also manage screen time. And whenever I'm talking to parents of younger kids, I always say that it's perfectly fine to take more of an authoritative approach in terms of just blocking whole sections of the internet or apps that you just don't want your child to be spending time sort of interacting with others on. As your children get older, you do want to start thinking a little bit more about a sort of collaborative process when it comes to that. Certainly middle and high schoolers will appreciate that a lot more. Utilizing resources like the Online Safety Hub as that guide for age recommendations, for app use as well. There was some research last year done here in the US, looking at gaming platforms in particular. And these researchers found that something like 60% of parents didn't actually realize that gaming platforms do have age restrictions. And as I mentioned earlier, most platforms, certainly social media platforms in the US and in the world, are not meant to be used by children under the age of 13. This is more of a legal restriction, and really not so much to do with sort of what we consider to be, healthy sort of developmental guidelines. But once you go into the Online Safety Hub and you look through some of those reviews, you will find that we have shared our own age recommendations as well. What we do when we decide on those is we combine whatever the platform itself is recommending, but then we will also look at other sort of benefits of that platform, some of the risks as well, weigh those, and then decide on whatever the recommended age is for that particular platform. And then finally, they're turning on any of the what we refer to as sort of those native internet filters. So whatever is provided already on, say, an iPhone, or whether you're using an Android, whether it's a laptop, whatever it is that your child is using, enabling things like Google Safe Search, things like YouTube restricted mode. And if you're not the most tech savvy of parents, which I know many people aren't, you will find very, very simple guidelines for how to do this inside the Online Safety Hub. So second step, talking about boundaries now, we are sort of venturing into talking a lot more about screen time. We are also talking about how our children use devices, and also sort of what some of those sort of expected behaviors are. What expectations do we have of them in terms of sort of how they show up online and how they interact with others. And I always like to say to parents, this isn't all that different to what we already do when it comes to their offline behaviors. So we talk often about how we talk to other members within our family. We talk about how we interact with strangers or how we speak to our teachers, how we speak to other children in the classroom. We talk about how we conduct ourselves outside of the home. What do we do when we want to cross the street or when we're in a public place? It's really the same sort of thing. We're just sort of transferring now into these virtual spaces. And one of the best things that you can really do that makes it really easy to do this is to use a digital contract. These are sometimes referred to as family contracts, tech contracts, device agreements, to establish what those clear rules are about device use, about the expectations you have in terms of your child's online behaviors. And the one thing I'll say here too is it's definitely not a sort of a one and done type of approach, especially if you do have a younger child. If your child is around the age of, say, 6 or 7 or 8, their digital contract at that age won't necessarily look the same as it will look when they're 11 or 12, or once they get to 14 or 15 or 16. So we definitely want to keep that in mind. You can set up a kind of schedule, if you will, of when you're going to revisit the contract. So say every 6 months or every year, you can make a list of some of the things that your child is maybe begging for you to be a little bit more flexible on, and then you can revisit those things every 6 months or again a year. And just keep in mind that that digital contract can really expand and grow and change as your child grows and changes as well. One of the most important things to do when it comes to screen time is have a very clear sense and communicate that very clearly around those off times at nighttime. There's a lot of research showing that devices in bedrooms are incredibly disruptive to us as well, let alone our children. Something like 60 or 70% of teenagers in the US get woken up at night multiple times because of the various sounds and pings and notifications coming from the various devices that they have in their bedrooms. So as much as possible to really keep bedrooms at nighttime device free. And then the final piece of advice here that is sometimes the most difficult one to really implement is to think about the behaviors that you want to see from your child, and then to model those same behaviors to them. And especially when our kids are younger, to try and do a little bit more of a show as opposed to a tell. And the example I like to use here is sort of dinner time or any kind of meal time. If you decide that in your family you want to keep meal times device free, one of the best ways that you can really get your child to implement that rule is by doing that yourself first, and sort of doing that at the dinner table so that they can see you do that. So pulling out your phone or a tablet, whatever the device happens to be, either turning off the notifications or ideally switching the device off completely and then putting it away in, say, a basket or some other common sort of area in your home where you want to keep all of your devices. And I would encourage you to do that as much as you can with as many of the different sort of rules and behaviors that you want to put into place. We do find that young children in particular are constantly sort of scanning their environment. They're constantly watching us, they're observing us, and then they're kind of copying what we do. They kind of try it on for size. And so this is really one of the most effective ways in which we can get them to follow the types of rules that we want to put in place. One thing I had to point out here when it comes to tech contracts is that you will find a number of different templates inside your district's online safety hub. However, we also have these fantastic tech contracts that Rachel has put together. This is the elementary school version. She's going to be sending you guys some more information about where you can find this, where you can download this. This really is probably the cutest version of a tech contract that I've ever seen. And it's just such a great idea because it really makes something that's a little bit kind of annoying and frustrating both for parents and kids. It takes it and makes it really fun and spins it around and gives it a kind of a fun little theme that you can play around with. And you've got sort of the pirates theme sort of moving throughout all of these different elements of these expected behaviors and boundaries. So I would encourage you to either look at the templates inside the hub or to go ahead and use this tech contract that Rachel has put together, which is it was a very, very cool idea. I was very impressed. Uh, and then third and final, before we wrap up, of course, talking about communication and really the importance of having conversations about all of these online safety and digital well-being topics, whether it's our children's favorite games or social media platforms that at the age of 7, they're begging us to get access to, but we really know that they're not meant to be using them until they're, say, 13 or 14 or 15. Perhaps they've witnessed cyberbullying happening, or maybe they came across really inappropriate adult content that really kind of shook them up. And now they're too young to make sense of it. So whatever the topic is, we do often find that the children who do report having the most positive online experience and the sort of lowest number of negative experiences online are the children who live in homes where this is a frequently discussed topic, where parents do have some level of awareness around where their kids are spending their time online, the appropriateness of those different apps and platforms. Parents will know things like, no matter the platform that their child is on, it could be Twitter, it could be something like Facebook or Snapchat. There are sections within each one of those platforms where incidents can be reported. This is one of the most important things that I would definitely encourage you all to look into if you're not aware of some of those sort of reporting pathways, if you will, inside the different platforms, to have a look at those, especially on the ones that your child is spending some time as well. These are the types of of topics that you want to have some knowledge around and kind of initiate these conversations with your children. That type of communication just really shows that you're curious about their digital life and their sort of the digital experiences, that you're active, that you're proactive, that you're curious and really positively involved and engaged in what they're doing online. And if you give them an opportunity to teach you things as well, that's where we can really make that communication so much more effective, and we can really, really make it stick. As your kids get older, certainly as they go into those tween and teen years, they will definitely appreciate if you kind of show up in that kind of humble or come from that kind of humble state of, look, I don't know a lot of these things. I know that some of it can be great and fun for you. I know some of it can be kind of dangerous and risky. And frankly, that really does scare me, but I know that I don't know enough about it. And I just saw this webinar that gave me kind of a little bit of food for thought, gave me some things to think about. And these are some of the things that I wanted to talk to you about as well. Why don't you tell me about your experiences with Snapchat, or how many kids in your class want or have Instagram, or whatever it is, right? There's a lot of different topics there that can serve as great conversation starters. In terms of some of the strategies that we recommend when it comes to kind of how best to communicate with our kids about these topics, one of them certainly is problem solving. This becomes really relevant when there are issues like, say, cyberbullying. Either it happens to your child or your child witnesses it. And there's so many different ways in which this can play out on social media platforms and different places. We're going to be going into a lot more detail around cyberbullying during that particular webinar that will be coming up in a couple of months. But really talking to your kids about how do they imagine this problem being solved, and what would be their ideal outcome in this scenario, and then really being there and letting them know that you are a resource and that you will help them. We often find that the reason why children frequently underreport negative online experiences is that they just think we won't understand, or we just don't know enough about what is going on. They're worried we're going to be very judgmental from the very start. They're worried that we'll say things like, well, then just get off that platform, stop playing that game. Or, their worst nightmare of all the nightmares is that we'll go, well, I'm taking your device for the next X number of days or weeks or month, and that's it. You can't use any of it. So a complete kind of blackout when it comes to their internet access, which we don't want to be doing. We want to try and find a different way of problem solving these issues. Leaving a little bit of space for them when having these conversations. Sometimes it might take them a little while to open up. If you've never had these conversations with your kids before, they might wonder, like, why are you suddenly talking to me about Snapchat when we've never talked about it before? Why do you want to know what my favorite gaming platform is, or things like that? So it might take them a little while to kind of warm up to that idea, but we definitely want to to try and share some open-ended questions with them, and again, leave that space and have them share their thoughts and their experiences with us. And then talking with them as much as we possibly can, and not so much at them, and not so much jumping into that kind of fix-it mode, as soon as our child shares something with us. This is, again, one of the reasons that we find that they underreport the negative experiences that they have online, because they're worried that we'll just immediately jump into that mode and start telling them what to do and what not to do. And they don't react very well to that. As you can imagine, the older they get, kind of the worse their reaction is to that. So really trying to kind of be non-judgmental, trying to be very open, trying to ask some of those open-ended questions, and just really get a better sense of their experience online in this kind of entirely unprecedented, tech-saturated digital age that we're all living in right now. So with that, I am going to wrap up here, I think. I've shared quite a lot of information with you there. I just want to have a look at our chat here for those of you who are joining us live, just to see. All right, perfect. So again, for those of you who are joining us live, Rachel did drop a whole number of links there for useful resources, things like the tech contract, the cyber safety hub, and a few other things. So I definitely recommend that you check that out. If you have any questions at all, you can feel free to email me here. You can use that request an article or app review button inside the online safety hub as well. And I'd be more than happy to provide you with some more resources and just to answer any questions that you might have. So with that, Rachel, I think I'll invite you to just unmute again and just to wrap us up for today.
Good. All right. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you. I love this partnership. I love the ability to expand all of our knowledge and resources that we have in the district with the community and with parents, and to just come alongside you. As you mentioned, I dropped a ton of links into the chat, and so people can for sure check them out. I also put my email in the chat. So I am more than happy to provide those to you at another time, or if you have questions, or for instance, I've had some people mention those family home contracts. They don't have a printer at home, and we don't have the one that was sent home with our child that didn't make it home. I will send another one. So feel free to reach out, and we would love to hear from you. We'd love to get feedback on what's going on in your homes and how we can better help. And scheduling these webinars is just the start. We want to continue with that. So I appreciate everyone's time, and boy, I sure am excited to continue on with this the series.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel. Again, this is just our sort of introductory offering of some of the basics around online safety management. We do have one more webinar reserved for all of the high school families. And then after that, we are going to launch into looking at some of the more sort of some of the more detailed views on some of the more sort of serious topics that you might be battling, and then sharing a lot of really great information with you there. So thank you all so much once again. If you have any questions, please feel free to follow up either with Rachel or myself. And we hope to see you at some of our future webinars. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.